Anne to the brave frogs of Wartwood, Sasha to the strong toads in the tower, and Marcy to the wise newts of Newtopia, winding up exactly where these three needed to be for the world to be saved. Was it destiny or sheer luck? What if things had come differently? The girls would definitely not be able to smile today. What if Anne was teleported to Newtopia instead and Marcy was in Wartwood? We are going to follow the original structure of the show in our considerations, so let's first take a look at Marcy's experiences in Wartwood and at how she meets Sasha before Anne, who has the calamity box in this timeline too, is introduced. Considering that in the original timeline Marcy managed to get hurt the most out of the three girls despite being teleported to the safest place in Amphibia, there's a good chance she straight up dies in the amphibian wilderness. But that route is boring. Instead, Marcy does not place a trap like Anne did, given that she is very busy studying the foreign flora and fauna, so Sprig is not caught. When he finds her, Marcy immediately acts friendly towards him, making Sprig realize that she's far from the monster Wally described. They do not have to fight the mantis because they go back to the village relatively soon, and that's good, because no one would have survived that. What's more, due to Marcy's clumsy personality, he wonders how Marcy survived in the woods, which is why he begs Hop to let her stay with them. She obviously needs their help. He believes them, because Marcy catches fire. HP is glad he took Marcy in, as the two of them quickly bond over farming and plants and stuff. In this timeline, Hop and Marcy are kind of like the new Sprig and Anne. Next to the Plantar family, Marcy is slowly but surely accepted by the other villagers, due to improving life in the village, similar to how she did in Newtopia. For real this time, not like in New Wartwood. Several weeks pass until Hop decides to run for mayor. From this point on, we will sometimes consider how the story would be affected by Hop having won the election, because knowing Marcy, she probably studied Amphibia's political system and advises Hop to campaign throughout the entire valley. At least, the outcome of the election does not change the fact that Grime is coming for Hop's head. Even if he shouldn't be allowed to just murder the mayor, he also acted on his own in the original timeline, meaning he'll do the same this time. Not to mention that as the mayor, Hop would fight the Toad's injustice and become an even bigger nuisance in Grime's eyes. In the meantime, at Toad Tower everything plays out exactly like in the original timeline, up to the point when Sasha turns up at the Frog of the Year party to invite the villagers to the tower. The good-hearted Marcy does not expect her friend of many years to ever do something evil, thus does not suspect in the slightest that the party could be a trap, doesn't come to save the Wartwoodians, so that everyone is gathered on the roof for HP's execution without Wally having planted boom shrooms in the basement. Marcy can't fight well enough and does not have the willpower to stand up to Sasha in the first place, leading up to Hop actually being thrown off the cliff. But he does not die. Marcy's presence in Wartwood secures that Hop can be saved, either because Marcy's improvements to the village enable the villagers to do it, for example if Marcy builds safety equipment for them, or because when Marcy sees Hop falling, believing he's dropping to his death, her calamity powers are activated, just like Anne's when Sprig fell out of the castle. In contrast to Anne, Marcy does not go into rage mode though, especially not against Sasha. She simply uses them to rescue Hop and all the other frogs. Okay, she might punch Grime once, but Toad Tower collapses anyway due to the impact of the powers, and thus the army's plan fails. From this point on, there are two possible routes, because we can't say with 100% certainty whether Marcy and Sasha split up following the battle at Toad Tower. In the first route, Marcy returns to Wartwood with the frogs, leaving Sasha with Grime. Sasha was not officially defeated by Marcy, meaning that the relationship between them is still better than between Anne and Sasha in the OT, but Marcy's behavior still ticks off Sasha Sasha. She did not obey her, but she also did not want to face her to fight it out. So Sasha is out to get a one-on-one with Marcy to show her who's boss. So while the events of Toadcatcher unfold, Marcy and the Plantars begin their journey to Newtopia. Keeping in mind that HP could be mayor in this timeline, the Plantars may not accompany Marcy, being busy with official duties. Though, given that Marcy means so much to Hop, we'll assume they travel along. By the way, due to the calamity box being with Anne in Newtopia, HP never buries the box, and after the rain does not occur. On the way to Newtopia, Marcy and Sprig do not activate the frog factory, taking into account that Marcy the bookworm has deeply studied Hop's rules of the road and does not disobey a single one of them. In short, Frobo does not exist in this reality. In the second route, Marcy only makes sure the villagers are safe but chooses to stay with Sasha, because under no circumstances does she want to be separated from her friend again after finding her. In order to avoid any issues in their relationship, Marcy quietly yields to Sasha. General Yunan poses no threat to the three of them, either because she can't defeat three opponents at once, or because due to Marcy's intellect, she does not even find them in the first place. Grime and Sasha come up with the idea to start a revolution, and Marcy can't do anything about it. She does not want to support them, but she doesn't dare to oppose Sasha anymore, out of fear of destroying their so-called friendship. More on this topic later. Their group will later encounter Anne at the first temple. Now that you know both the routes that lead up to Anne's introduction into the story, first we are going to take a look at the entire former route before we return to the latter. However, to be able to follow the routes, we must first discuss what Anne has been up to in Newtopia thus far. When she first gets teleported, she randomly strolls around the city trying to find out where she is, and makes the acquaintance of many different people, just like she did in Scavenger Hunt. It's not long before word about a strange creature reaches the king, and Anne is taken to Andrias, who's thrilled to ask her all kinds of questions, like how she got to Amphibia. Anne figures if there's a person who could help her find Marcy and Sasha and a way back to Earth, it's the king of this strange world. She tells him everything about the calamity box. Andrias begins his investigation, and the book that contains information about the gems and the temples is found long before the Plantars or anyone else reaches Newtopia. But no one besides Marcy is clever enough to finish the first temple, and even if there was someone, the gem could not be recharged without Marcy. Thus the story only really takes up pace again when Marcy and or Sasha meet Anne. Before we address their encounters in the two different routes, it is important to mention that Andrias does not see an appropriate host for the core in Anne, who is in no way as intelligent as Marcy. He likely never gets to know Marcy close enough to notice her qualifications. Besides, we do not know of any character in Newtopia that could become a true friend to Anne, so her development is a lot less refined than in the original timeline. Anyway, Route 1. Marcy and the Plantars arrive in Newtopia. Marcy pours her heart out to Anne regarding her tensions with Sasha. Anne is confident that they can work it all out, especially because the temples promise a soon return home. Depending on whether Marcy's powers have already awakened back at Toad Tower, she could become wary of recharging the box and of Andrias. But ultimately, to get the box to work again, there is no other choice, so she clears the first temple and recharges the green gem. The events of the second temple occur just like in the original timeline. Even if Anne does not care much about the Plantars, she worries about Marcy when she hears their screams, which is why she hastily leaves, keeping a part of her power. The third temple mission is the same as in the OT, with a single exception that Sasha pretends to make up with Marcy instead of Anne. Well, the hardest take in this timeline is that due to Marcy's absence from Newtopia, right after the girls finish discharging the final gem, Anne simply opens the music box and they all return home. No invasion takes place, at least not until the calamity box returns to Amphibia in another 1,000 years, when the 3 people arrive that the prophecy actually refers to. However, we should consider that it's probably relatively easy for Andrias to trick Anne into handing over the box to him. Not living in Newtopia, Marcy never really learned how to work the calamity box. Thus Andrias is the only one who knows how to open a portal to Earth. If this is not what Andrias told Anne to make her come back, it is what Marcy would suggest, keeping in mind that she does not actually want to go home, thus tries to stretch their stay as much as possible. Therefore, alternatively, the following episodes go down like in the original up to True Colors. So far, Sasha only had beef with Marcy, but due to Sasha betraying her and Marcy, Anne is also fed up with Sasha, meaning that despite Anne and Sasha not carrying out their original conflict, Anne still won't believe Sasha when she tries to convince Anne that Andrias is evil. Not to mention that even if they tried keeping Andrias imprisoned, in my opinion, Season 3 provided plenty of evidence that if Andrias wanted, he could easily take the box from the girls by force, given they don't have any powers. Eventually, the revolution is defeated. The box finds its way into Andrias' hands. Anne still has her powers, but they do not awaken because her bond to Sprig or any of the Plantars is nowhere near the OT level. That being the case, the group does not even get in a position to open a portal to Earth. They are all killed or imprisoned, while Andrias and the core lean back to enjoy the invasion of Earth. Even if they do manage to open a portal like in the OT, when Marcy is stabbed, there's no more reason to look at what happens along that route. Since she is not becoming the core's vessel, Marcy is left to die. Based on the fact that even the core feared the calamity power could be lost forever when its wielder dies, we can assume that with Marcy's death, no world traveling will ever take place again. Not for the girls and not for Andrias. In addition, Marcy never got Joe Sparrow. In other words, Sprig, or whichever frog Andrias decides to throw out the window, cannot be saved. That still does not activate anyone's powers though. The only good thing about this route is that at least before they all died, Andrias never revealed that Marcy got them all teleported to Amphibia on purpose, considering that Marcy never told him about it. Well, on to Route 2. Due to the fact that Marcy and the Plantars are not making a trip to Newtopia, it takes a lot more time for Marcy to arrive there. The only reason why she even gets there is that she wants to warn the city about the imminent invasion. She can't openly admit to Sasha that she is against the revolution, which is why she quietly tries to keep the damage to a minimum. By making up a reason like needing to scout the area around and inside of the city to support the infiltration, Marcy creates an opportunity to travel to Newtopia, where she unexpectedly runs into Anne. They exchange all the relevant information about the revolution, arguments, and the calamity box. While Andrias takes his time preparing for the attack, Marcy convinces Sasha to do the temple missions. Sasha agrees, but only because she sees the chance to infiltrate the city in them. Her plan, that Marcy leaks to Andrias, is the same as in the original timeline. The first temple is cleared. After visiting the second temple, Anne still has half her power. In another what if, I argued that with Sasha there, Anne does not need to worry about Marcy and the Plantars when they scream, because Sasha can protect them, what would mean she loses her entire power. But on this route, Marcy has informed Anne about everything Sasha has done and about her evil schemes. Therefore, she does break off the charging. Out of fear, Sasha could have done something to Marcy. The Plantars aren't even present. The third temple is cleared, excluding the possibility of opening the box straight away again. The girls return to Newtopia. Believing victory is guaranteed, Grime and Sasha give the signal to their soldiers. The revolution is shut down immediately. Reason being that Andrias knew everything about it. What's interesting about this situation is that even though Marcy's secret has not been revealed, the relationship between Sasha and Marcy is very similar to the OT. Andrias will at least spill the beans about Marcy being a mole. So while Sasha and Grime are locked away, Anne hands over the box to Andrias. Well, the Plantars aren't at the castle, Frobo doesn't exist, and Sasha is imprisoned. Marcy and Anne are no match for Andrias, as Anne's calamity power is never activated. In the end, the girls are all killed or kept in jail, not being able to do anything about Andrias merrily invading Earth. Summed up, if Anne and Marcy had exchanged places, there is in fact a tiny chance that everything takes a happy turn, but total failure is just way more likely. What's good about this timeline is that Sasha tried killing less people. Well done, Sasha. Unfortunately, all the drama Anne and Sasha originally had is passed on to Marcy. This girl does not get any rest. At least she did not get possessed, and because her secret was not revealed, Anne and Sasha got hurt less. Ultimately, that's not worth a lot, unfortunately, seeing that the future is doomed. If only the ending was acceptable. I would have loved to see Marcy's time in Wartwood, because even the little time she spent there in the OT was incredibly fun. By the way, even if Anne is really killed, she will not meet the Guardian in this timeline. Firstly, because her powers are never activated, meaning that her connection to the gems is very weak. And secondly, because when she stays in Newtopia, her character development is practically zero. Rather, it's possible that Marcy meets the Guardian, though she would probably not be offered to become the next one, since her flaws are too irresponsible. Somehow, knowing the alternatives are worse makes me feel better about all the awful stuff that happened in the show. It does have a nice ring to it too. Everything was predestined, foretold in the prophecy of the 3 stars burning bright.